Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to look at a set of sources covering a really unsettling true crime case. It's one where this image, this facade of a perfect couple in Las Vegas, just completely crumbled under, well, financial pressure and a need for control.
Yeah, it escalates dramatically, and it leads to this incredibly calculated betrayal and ultimately murder.
We're focusing on the sources that detail the life of Shauna Tiaffay, her tragic death, and the, frankly, shocking discovery of who was really pulling the strings.
Exactly. It's a story about manipulation, too. How someone can use vulnerability. Shauna's story starts pretty bright, though. She was Shauna Ann Castleton originally.
Right, she moved from Salt Lake City to Vegas back in '94.
Yeah.
She was 28 then, chasing that Vegas excitement, the glitz and glamour people talk about.
And she seemed to find her footing there. Became a cocktail waitress at the Palms Hotel Casino, which was and is a pretty prestigious place.
Yeah, the sources paint her as really popular, very positive. Friends called her a free spirit, someone with this kind of innocence about her, even working in that environment.
And then there's George Tiaffay. On paper, he's the golden boy. Star athlete in school, homecoming king, and a West Point graduate.
That West Point background is significant, isn't it? It suggests discipline, structure.
Absolutely. And he carried that into his career as a firefighter for Clark County. Highly respected. He and Shauna met at the Palms, actually, around 2002.
Got married in Hawaii, had their daughter, Madison. For a while, it looked like the dream,
Yeah.
George was seen as protective, charming, charismatic.
The whole package, seemingly. But that idea of control, which maybe seemed protective initially, it becomes central later.
It really does. Because the big turning point, according to all the sources, was the 2008 housing market crash. George apparently took a huge financial hit.
Massive losses. It basically flipped their roles entirely. Shauna, the waitress, suddenly became the main breadwinner.
And for someone like George with that background, that kind of alpha achiever persona,
Yeah.
that must have been incredibly difficult.
Devastating, I'd imagine. Not just financially, but psychologically. His whole identity was likely tied up in being the successful provider. Losing that. Well, the stress didn't just cause arguments.
No, it seems like it twisted into something much darker. A need to regain control, but in a really negative way.
Exactly. The sources show the stress quickly turning into outright abuse, jealousy, resentment, constant control.
There's that horrible moment Shauna shared with friends, George calling her a whore as she left for work.
And their daughter Madison, just a little girl, heard it. That tells you how toxic things had become. It wasn't just behind closed doors anymore.
No. And his controlling behavior started getting weird. Strategic, almost.
Yeah.
Like this friendship he struck up with a local homeless man, Noel Stevens.
Noel Stevens, known as Greyhound, George would have him do odd jobs, yard work, that sort of thing.
But Shauna found it really unsettling. The sources say she described it as creepy. She just didn't trust this guy or George's relationship with him.
Yeah, and her instincts were spot on, weren't they? Looking back, George was basically cultivating an asset, someone outside the family, vulnerable, someone he could potentially manipulate.
It's chilling. So Shauna clearly saw the writing on the wall. She did the right thing. She moved out, got her own place, a townhouse in Summerlin.
They started sharing custody of Maddie, even tried marriage counseling for a bit.
But Shauna was realistic. Hopeful, maybe, for her own future. But she knew the marriage was likely over. She even texted George something like, "Once we live separate, I don't think there's any going back."
She was signaling the end. And for George, losing control of the finances and now potentially losing control of the marriage entirely.
It seems that's when the planning really kicked in. That West Point discipline, but applied to something awful. The shift from sort of emotional lashing out to cold strategy.
Yes, and that brings us to the practice run.
Right, the staged break-in. About 3 weeks before the murder, Shauna gets home to her new apartment, and it's been ransacked.
But it wasn't a typical burglary. Some sentimental things were gone, like her engagement ring things George would know she valued.
But then the really strange stuff. Her bikini bottoms were stolen. Just the bottoms.
And the intruder left something behind, a pair of men's boxer briefs.
So bizarre. Why? What's the point of that?
It's psychological warfare, really.
Yeah.
Stealing intimate items makes the victim feel personally targeted, vulnerable. Leaving male underwear, that suggests maybe a jealous lover or a random sexual predator.
Diverts attention away from the estranged husband.
Exactly. And it worked, initially. The police didn't connect it immediately, but Shauna was terrified, put completely on edge. Which was likely the point. It was a test of the setup.
Okay, so the stage is set. Then comes the night of September 29th, 2012.
Yeah.
Shauna finishes her shift at the Palms. It's late. after 3 a.m.
Gets home to her townhouse around 3:30 a.m., probably goes in through the garage.
And that's when it happens. A neighbor later reported hearing a thudding sound from the apartment between 3:30 and 4:00 a.m.
Then the discovery. George, who had just finished a 24-hour shift, a perfect alibi, picks up their daughter, Maddie, who was 8 at the time.
Takes her to Shauna's apartment saying they need to get some of Maddie's things.
And that's when he supposedly finds the garage door open and Shauna, dead on the floor. He calls 911.
That 911 call is, really something. He sounds upset, sure, but also very measured. His first priority seems to be getting Maddie out of there.
Which is understandable, but then...
Then he immediately establishes his alibi. Explicitly states he's a firefighter, just off shift, and hadn't seen Shauna for about 36 hours. Plants that seed right away.
It's very calculated. It's a difference between genuine shock and performing shock while ticking off mental checkboxes. The attack itself was horrific.
Brutal. The sources say her skull was crushed, consistent with a hammer, broken fingers too, defensive wounds. She fought back.
She definitely did. Initially, the police looked at the prior burglary, wondered if it was connected or if this was some random terrible attack. George's alibi seemed solid.
But Shauna's family wasn't buying it. Her sister, Paula, was there almost immediately. She was actually talking to a grief counselor George had contacted.
And Paula told the counselor straight up, I have my suspicions that her husband may be involved in this.
Wow. Right from the beginning.
It shows how much Shauna must have confided in her family about George's behavior. They knew, they felt the danger.
So the family suspects George, but the police are still working through leads. Then, 9 days later, the case breaks. And it's because of Noel Stevens, Greyhound.
He couldn't keep quiet. A guy called Big Will goes to the police. Says his friend, Noel Stevens, this homeless guy, is bragging about killing a woman with a hammer.
Bragging and laughing about it, saying he just completed a mission. That language, vision.
It sounds like something someone else told him to say, doesn't it? Like he was given instructions.
Definitely. So the police track down Noel Stevens. Initially, they just hold him on some minor drug charges while they dig deeper.
And near his campsite, out in the desert where he lived in a tent, they find the physical evidence. Blood-soaked trousers. Bloody underwear.
And the crucial piece, a small laminated price tag for a hammer.
That little tag is what starts to unravel everything for George. The police check Noel's phone records.
And who's in his contacts?
Just one number that connects everything. George, the firefighter. Noel admits, yeah, George is his friend.
But the nail in the coffin is the CCTV. The police trace that hammer tag back to a specific store.
And there it is, clear as day on the security footage. George Tiaffay and Noel Stevens together at the checkout.
Buying the hammer. The murder weapon.
Buying a hammer, the type used in the murder. It completely destroys George's carefully constructed image and alibi. There's no explaining that away as just helping out a friend with yard work tools, not given the context.
No way. And faced with that, Noel Stevens folds. He confesses everything.
Yep, tells him George paid him $600 cash. Just $600.
Unbelievable. With a promise of tens of thousands more from insurance money later.
Right. Noel says George gave him a copy of Shauna's apartment key, dark clothes to wear, and specifically told him to stage that earlier burglary.
As a practice run. To test security, test the plan, and confuse the police later.
It's just layer upon layer of cold calculation. Noel even described the attack itself.
Horrifying details. Hiding, waiting for her, following her upstairs. Shauna apparently begged him, asking, "Why are you doing this?"
As he hit her. 17 times, the sources say.
And then there's that detail about the hammer itself. George's specific instructions.
Yeah, this is almost surreal. Noel testified that George, the planner, told him not to use a wooden hammer because the handle might break during the attack. He advised using a fiberglass one.
He was thinking about the material integrity of the murder weapon.
Exactly. The irony. Noel didn't listen. He used a cheaper wooden one he already had.
And it broke.
It did. He had to finish the attack just using the hammerhead. It just underscores George's meticulous, detached planning, down to the potential failure points of the weapon.
So when George finds out the police have connected him to Noel,
Yeah.
that the CCTV exists, what does he do?
His composure finally cracks. Completely. He gets in his truck, drives it over 80 miles an hour straight into a concrete barrier.
A clear suicide attempt. The investigators found no skid marks, no braking at all.
He only survived because of his seatbelt and airbags, apparently. 2 days later, still in the hospital, the police formally arrest him for Shauna's murder.
And his reaction, after all the planning, the lies, the manipulation.
Yeah, that's all he said. The game was up.
So the trial comes. Noel Stevens is the star witness, having pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against George.
Right. And the prosecution backs up Noel's testimony with all that evidence. The phone records are damning.
How many calls?
In September 2012 alone, the month of the murder, 87 calls between George and Noel, including 5 calls the night right before she was killed.
Constant contact, constant coordination, and Shauna's family was there through it all.
Every day, wearing pink, her favorite color. They even gave the lead prosecutor Shauna's lucky poker chip for strength, a powerful symbol.
What could the defense even argue against all that?
Their only real play was to discredit Noel Stevens. They argued he was manipulative, unreliable. They brought up his admission under cross-examination that he sometimes suffered from auditory and visual hallucinations.
Trying to plant doubt, suggesting Noel made up George's involvement.
Pretty much. Claiming the CCTV just showed them buying tools for yard work, trying to normalize it. But it was a tough sell against the sheer weight of the other evidence.
Especially the timing, the prior burglary, the sheer number of calls. It all fit together too perfectly.
The jury thought so too. After deliberating for 3 days, they came back. Guilty. First-degree murder, conspiracy, 6 other counts.
And the sentence.
Life without the possibility of parole. Plus another 81 years tacked on. The judge was blunt, called the crime just pure evil.
Did George show any remorse?
None reported. His sister-in-law Paula said she was satisfied he'd be locked away, his control finally gone.
He did try to appeal, though.
Oh, yeah. He filed this incredibly long, rambling document, like 107 pages, writing about himself in the third person.
What was his argument?
He tried to claim prescription drugs had altered his mind. And, get this, he said he thought God directed him to perpetrate a crime to protect his child.
Wow. So basically admitting he orchestrated it, but trying to plead insanity or diminished capacity after the fact?
Essentially, yes. A desperate, twisted attempt to justify the unjustifiable. The appeal failed quickly.
So Shauna's family, they found some justice in the verdict, and they've tried to create a positive legacy.
They have. They started Justice for Shauna, an organization focused on raising awareness about domestic violence, about the kind of control issues that led to this. Shauna herself was reburied back in Utah near her father.
And Maddie.
Yeah.
Their daughter.
She now lives with her grandmother, Shauna's mom, and spends time with her Aunt Paula. The judge specifically highlighted the immense cruelty George inflicted, not just on Shauna, but especially on his own daughter, destroying her world. Shauna's greatest joy, everyone said, was being a mom.
It's just devastating. This whole deep dive really shows how someone seen as successful, disciplined West Point firefighter can twist those very traits.
Absolutely. He used his status, his intelligence, his discipline, not for good, but to meticulously plan violence when his ego felt threatened, when he felt his control slipping. He manipulated Noel Stevens' vulnerability, turning him into a weapon.
It's a chilling reminder. And as you think about this case, maybe consider that one detail, George's advice on the murder weapon. Worrying about a wooden hammer breaking, suggesting fiberglass for reliability.
That cold, calculated focus on the mechanics of the act itself.
What does that level of detachment tell you about the difference between, say, a crime of passion, an explosion of rage, and this? An act of premeditated betrayal born from a deep-seated need for absolute, unforgiving control. Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.